Hi there, welcome back to the Community of Readers video blog. We're following the Old Testament readings for the Monkey Bar Challenge. This week we're looking at the whole of the Book of Song of Songs. This is called Spiritually Sexual. Song of Songs is a book with an interesting tradition. It was actually during the Middle Ages the most translated book of the Bible by monks. People committed to a lifetime of celibacy. It's a book about sex. And yet there have been debates ever since the 3rd century about whether this really is about the physical expression of sexual desire or whether it's an allegory of the relationship between Christ, the lover, and his beloved, the church. Song of Songs is poetry. It's not a kind of genre that's written to make a point. So as we're reading poetry, we have to take its tensions. We have to feel how it makes us feel, reflect, think, react. That's the value of it. And as we read this poetry, we are encountering something that really does delve in to the passionate reality of sexual experience. Maybe we can read it as an allegory, but I think, as many people are thinking these days about Song of Songs, we perhaps just miss something very real by, I was going to say pretending, maybe that's a bit harsh, but by putting this idea of allegory onto it and not embracing what it actually says about something that is very deep to each of our lives. Is our sexuality spiritual? Is it something spiritual? The Book of Song of Songs really is about the lover and his beloved. And occasionally there's a kind of chorus of the beloved's friends who kind of commentate a little bit on what's going on. And it's a book about longing. I mean, there's not really a clear story, but there is a lot of deep longing. It gets quite sexually explicit, quite erotic, but the act of sex itself is never described in that sense. It's always just alluded to. There's innuendo. You can imagine these two lovers interlacing their words with vulnerable looks and flirting movements. It has that energy about it. And in all of this, in all of the funny idioms from the ancient Near East, which we don't really understand, sheeps and goats and pomegranates and stuff used to describe other stuff, in all of that, there is something profound. It's the passionate longing, the desperate longing of love that unites the idea of sex in Song of Songs with the reality of spiritual experience. We long for our lovers. We long for God like a lover. That longing, the longing that comes from love, is spiritual. It's deeply spiritual. It's deeply profound. I think about contemporary sexuality. I think about those adverts that are designed to arouse us. I think about the internet that is just awash with graphic pornography. There is no longing. There is no space for longing. Sex is an immediate commodity. I mean, you can go out and just find someone to get laid. You can go on the internet and satisfy yourself immediately. But what about the passionate longing of love? What about when that finds its climax in a sexual experience? That is an act of love that is translated into deep desire and something spiritual that lasts. Song of Songs is a book, for me at least, when I read it I feel like the depth of the relationship is so strong, and that is the context for the sexual experience, that the alternatives hardly need a critique. And it's that passionate longing that could change how we view sex in our society. Being sexual isn't just about the physical things that we might do with another person. Being sexual affects all of who we are. For me, being a heterosexual male is, I think, as much about how I treat women. Do I respect women? As it is about the way that I interact with one particular woman. Certainly more than whether I happen to find the female physical form more attractive than the male physical form. Those things feel not that relevant to me. But sexuality has to be something that is transformative. I think it has to transform us. We're transformed through our encounters with other people. It can happen in a whole load of ways. Sexuality, I think, can transform us as we share a meal, as we work together, through a reassuring touch, through a vulnerable exchange of ideas, even as it itself finds its zenith in an intimate physical encounter. These are all ways that we express our love and we express our longing for the other, a desperate desire. In chapter 5 of Song of Songs, there's this moment where the beloved is battered and bruised by desire. And our desire for God, our desire for those we love, does that take us to that kind of love? One that we would sacrifice for. That's the kind of love that is spiritual. That's the kind of sexuality that can bring hope. That's the kind of spirituality that can be sexual. In our contemporary world, there are all sorts of questions about sexuality, and 21st century spirituality has not coped very well with 21st century sexuality. Whether it's homosexual, metrosexual, bisexual, transsexual, all of these things that kind of deviate from the normal way that we had imagined that sex should be in the context of a heterosexual marriage relationship. And I don't think Song of Songs will help us solve those questions, but the lack of fascination with the physical act of sex itself that Song of Songs displays, coupled with the idea that sex is by far and away better in a context of love. That might be a powerful challenge to both sides in that debate. We live in a world desperately in need of love. And our sexuality is a major way that we express our love. So as we think about our spirituality and how we can shape our world for good, we need to include our sexuality in that conversation and learn to be spiritually sexual.